Imagine standing in the lobby of a towering 40-story building, clutching a worn-out resume, your hands trembling with nerves. The gleaming walls of steel and glass seem a far cry from the orphanage where you grew up. But here you are, 23 years old, fresh out of community college, and ready to face the world. That's exactly where Emma Foster finds herself. At the doorstep of Foster Enterprises, a global empire led by a man she's only ever seen in business magazines. A man with the same last name as her. But that's just a coincidence, right? After all, she was raised in an orphanage, left with nothing but a silver locket and a name given to her by the state. Emma hadn't even planned on applying here. Her roommate had submitted her resume without her knowing, and now she's about to sit down for an entry-level interview in the accounting department. But as fate would have it, things are about to take a bizarre turn. As she nervously waits to meet the hiring manager, something unexpected happens. Mr. Blake, the accounting manager, looks up from her resume and says, "There's been a change of plans, Miss Foster. Mr. Alexander Foster would like to meet you personally." Now, why on earth would the billionaire CEO of a massive company want to meet with someone applying for an entry-level job? That's the question racing through Emma's mind as she waits in a small conference room, her heart pounding in her chest. When the door finally opens, in walks Alexander Foster himself, tall, broad-shouldered, with piercing blue eyes that seem to look right through her. He's even more intimidating in person than in the photos she's seen of him. What starts as a formal interview quickly takes an unexpected turn. Alexander begins asking strange questions about her background, where she grew up, her birth date, and if she knows anything about her parents. Emma's confusion grows with every question. Why is the CEO of a billion-dollar company so interested in her personal history? The room seems to tighten around her when Alexander asks, "Has anyone ever told you that you have very distinctive eyes?" Emma's breath catches. Her violet eyes, an unusual trait she'd always thought was just a quirky detail, now seem to hold some deeper significance. When she admits that she grew up in an orphanage and only has a locket with no real connection to her past, Alexander's demeanor changes. There's something he's not telling her, something he knows. Then, in a move that leaves Emma reeling, Alexander offers her a job, but not the one she applied for. He doesn't want her in accounting. Instead, he wants her to be his personal assistant. The salary, triple what the accounting position would pay. Why? She doesn't know. He simply says, "I have a strong intuition about people." Emma is left confused, suspicious, and overwhelmed. Who is this man really? Why is he so interested in her past? And why does she feel like she's standing on the edge of discovering something that will change her life forever? Later that night, sitting on her bed in her small apartment, Emma pulls out the one item that ties her to her past, the silver locket she's had since infancy. It's always been sealed shut, but something urges her to try again, and this time, something clicks. The locket opens. Inside is a small faded photograph. Emma gasps as she looks closer. It's Alexander Foster, much younger, with his arm around a beautiful woman with dark hair and violet eyes exactly like hers. What does this mean? Who was the woman in the photo? And why was her picture hidden in the locket? Emma has had her whole life. Emma's mind races. Could Alexander Foster be connected to her in a way she never imagined? And if so, what is he hiding? This is just the beginning of Emma's journey, a journey that will unravel secrets, challenge everything she thought she knew, and reveal connections that could change her life forever. Why does Emma, a girl born in an orphanage, share the last name of one of the world's most powerful men. And what will happen when the truth finally comes to light? Stay tuned for the next part of this incredible story. You won't want to miss what happens next. Emma stared at the photograph inside the locket, her heart pounding louder with each passing second. She couldn't believe what she was seeing. How was it possible that the same man who just interviewed her, the billionaire CEO, Alexander Foster, was in this old worn-out photograph from her past? And who was the woman with him? The one with the same violet eyes Emma saw in the mirror every day. The room felt smaller now, as if the walls were closing in around her. The locket, once just a piece of jewelry that held no answers, now seemed like a key to everything. But the more she thought about it, the more confused she became. What was the connection? Why hadn't anyone ever told her about this before? Her childhood at the orphanage had always been a mystery. No one knew anything about her parents, and she had learned to stop asking questions a long time ago. But this changed everything. The next morning, Emma could barely focus. Her mind kept drifting back to the locket, the photograph, and the strange connection she felt with Alexander Foster. She had been working as his personal assistant for only a few days, but every interaction left her with more questions than answers. Alexander was always polite, but there was a guardedness in his demeanor that made Emma feel like he was hiding something. And it wasn't just his questions about her past. It was the way he watched her, like he was studying her, searching for something. As days turned into weeks, Emma found herself growing more suspicious. There were moments when she caught Alexander staring at her in meetings, his gaze lingering just a bit too long. And then there were the strange conversations where he would casually bring up her childhood or ask about the locket, always in a way that seemed innocent, but Emma could feel the weight behind his words. Meanwhile, things were changing in the office too. People started treating her differently. It wasn't just that she was the CEO's assistant now. There was a whispering behind her back, a sense that everyone knew something she didn't. Her desk was moved closer to Alexander's office, and she was given more responsibilities, some of which didn't make sense for a personal assistant. She was asked to handle confidential documents, attend high-level meetings, and even travel with Alexander on business trips. The more she was pulled into his world, the more she felt like she was losing control of her own life. One night, after a particularly long day, Emma sat in her apartment, scrolling through old photos and documents she had from the orphanage. There was hardly anything, just a few records and letters from when she was placed in care. But then, something caught her eye. A name scribbled in the corner of one of the documents. Margaret Foster. Emma's heart stopped. Foster. The same last name. Could it be a coincidence? The next day, Emma took the document to work, her mind racing with questions. She had to confront Alexander. She couldn't go on like this, living in the dark about who she was. She needed answers, and she was determined to get them. As soon as she stepped into his office, she felt the tension in the air. Alexander was seated behind his large mahogany desk, his expression unreadable. Emma didn't waste any time. She placed the document on his desk and said, "I need to know the truth, Alexander. Why do I have your last name? Who is Margaret Foster? And why is her name on my records?" For a moment, there was only silence. Alexander's eyes flickered to the document, then back to Emma. His jaw tightened, and he leaned back in his chair, letting out a slow breath. "Margaret Foster," he began, his voice low and controlled, "was my sister." Emma's heart dropped. She hadn't expected that. She didn't know what she had expected, but not this. She disappeared over 20 years ago, Alexander continued, his voice heavy with emotion. No one knew what happened to her. There were rumors, of course, but nothing concrete. She left behind a daughter. Emma's legs felt weak. She stumbled back slightly, gripping the edge of the desk to steady herself. "You mean," she stammered, trying to process the flood of information. "You mean I'm my niece?" Alexander finished for her. "Yes, Emma, you are my niece." The room spun around her as the truth sunk in. Everything made sense now. The photograph in the locket, the questions about her past, the strange way Alexander had been watching her. But if she was his niece, why had she grown up in an orphanage? Why hadn't anyone ever come for her? "I didn't know about you," Alexander said quietly, as if reading her thoughts. "Not until recently. My father kept your existence a secret from me. He didn't want me to know about Margaret's child. And by the time I found out, it was too late." Emma could feel the anger rising in her chest. She had spent her whole life feeling alone, abandoned. And now she found out that she had a family. Family that had been kept from her. "But why now?" she asked, her voice trembling. "Why didn't you say anything when we first met?" Alexander stood up, walking around his desk to stand in front of her. "Because I wanted to be sure. I didn't want to overwhelm you with everything all at once. And there's more, Emma. Things about my father. About what really happened to Margaret." Emma's mind raced. What else could there possibly be? What more could he tell her that would change everything even more than it already had? But before Alexander could say another word, the door to his office burst open, and a man Emma had never seen before stepped inside. His eyes were wild, his face pale, and he looked straight at Alexander with a mixture of fear and desperation. "They've found out," the man said, his voice shaking. "They know about her." Emma felt a chill run down her spine. Emma's heart raced as the stranger's words hung in the air. "They know about her." Alexander's face went pale. And in that moment, Emma knew something far bigger was happening, something dangerous. She felt the weight of the secret pressing down on her, but she couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning. "Who knows?" Alexander asked, his voice sharp, but there was a tremor in it, revealing the fear he tried to hide. "The board," the man replied, glancing at Emma, as if realizing for the first time that she was there. "They've been digging into the old family files. They know about Margaret, and about her." His eyes flicked back to Emma, making her blood run cold. Emma took a step back, feeling the weight of everything crashing down on her. The orphanage, the secrets, her connection to this powerful family. It was all unraveling. And now it seemed like her very existence was putting her in danger. Alexander's jaw tightened, and he shot a glance at Emma, one filled with both regret and determination. "I'm sorry, Emma. I should have told you everything sooner. But I was trying to protect you." "Protect me?" Emma's voice cracked. "From what?" Alexander didn't answer right away. Instead, he walked toward the window, staring out at the city skyline, his hands clenched into fists. "My father was involved in things that no one should have been part of. Illegal deals, bribes, and people. People who wouldn't hesitate to destroy anyone who got in their way. When Margaret disappeared, she wasn't just running away. She was trying to escape from him." Emma's head spun. "But why was I left? In the orphanage? Why didn't anyone try to find me?" "Because they didn't know about you," Alexander said quietly. "My father hid you. He didn't want anyone to know that Margaret had a child, because he knew it would put you in danger. But when he died, certain people started digging into the family's past. They're trying to find leverage. And now that they know about you, they'll stop at nothing to use you against me." Emma felt her world crashing down around her. She had spent her whole life feeling unwanted, unloved, and now she was hearing that it wasn't just a mistake. It was a deliberate plan to protect her from people who wanted to hurt her. But that didn't make it any easier. "So what now?" she asked, her voice small. "What happens to me? We need to get you out of here," Alexander said, his tone urgent. "I'll make sure you're safe, but we have to act fast. These people aren't going to wait." Emma's mind was spinning. Just days ago, she was a girl with no family, no past. And now she was thrust into a world of billionaires, power struggles, and secrets that could cost her everything. But something inside her shifted. She had spent her entire life feeling powerless, but now she wasn't just going to sit back and let someone else dictate her fate. She looked at Alexander, her jaw set with determination. "I'm not running," she said firmly. "I'm not going to live my life in fear. This is my story too, and I deserve to know everything. No more secrets." Alexander looked at her, surprised by the sudden fire in her voice. He nodded slowly. "You're right. No more secrets." He took a deep breath before continuing. "My father didn't just hide you. He left behind something for you. A trust fund, a legacy that belongs to you. But claiming it comes with risks. It's why the board is after you now. They think if they can control you, they can control the company. That's why they want you out of the picture." Emma's heart pounded. She had always known there was more to her past. But she never imagined this. The billionaire world, the power, the danger. It was overwhelming. But for the first time, she felt like she had control. She wasn't just a pawn in someone else's game. She was going to fight for her place in this story. "What do we do?" she asked, her voice steady. Alexander smiled, a hint of admiration in his eyes. "We fight back, but we have to be smart about it. You have allies in this family, Emma. Not everyone wants to see you disappear. We'll gather the board, make our move, and show them that you're not someone they can just sweep under the rug." The plan was set in motion, and over the next few days, Emma and Alexander worked together, preparing for the showdown with the board. Emma learned more about her mother, Margaret, and the sacrifices she had made to keep her daughter safe. It was heartbreaking to think of the life they could have had together. But knowing that her mother had fought for her made Emma stronger. Finally, the day came. Emma stood in front of the board, facing down the people who had tried to control her. Life from behind the scenes. She felt a surge of confidence as she looked each of them in the eye, knowing that they had underestimated her. "You don't control me," she said, her voice steady and firm. "I'm here to claim what's mine. Not because I want the power or the money, but because I deserve the truth. My mother sacrificed everything for me, and I won't let anyone take that away." The board was silent, and Emma could see the fear in their eyes. They hadn't expected her to stand up for herself. They had expected her to run. In the end, the truth won out. The secrets of the Foster family were exposed, and Emma's place in the family was secured. She didn't need the money or the power, but knowing the truth about her past gave her something she had never had before, a sense of belonging. As she stood beside Alexander, looking out at the world that had once seemed so far out of reach, Emma felt a peace she hadn't known was possible. She had faced her past, fought for her future, and now she could finally move forward, knowing who she was and where she came from. And for the first time, she felt free.